Hi, I'm Alicia.
And I'm Robin, and you're listening to Bowel Moments,
the podcast sharing real talk about the realities of IBD. Served on the rocks. This week, past guest and friend of the show, Hannah Kramer, was my guest host, and we interviewed Alicia A. Alicia is the president of Girls with Guts, which is a nonprofit organization supporting and empowering women with IBD or ostomies. We talked to her about her story and how her IBD led her to get involved with Girls with Guts and eventually to become their president. We talked to her about the programming that Girls with Guts does, including their Love Your Guts program and their butt baskets. And we spent a lot of time talking about their annual retreat and all of the great activities and ways that people can get involved with that organization through that program. Cheers.
Welcome to Bowel Moments. This is Hannah.
Welcome, everybody. This is Alicia, and we are so excited to have guest host Hannah Kramer joining us because unfortunately, poor Robin has COVID, but Hannah was lovely enough to pinch hit for Robin. You can find her episodes linked in the show notes because I don't think you want to miss them. But we're also incredibly excited to be joined by Alicia A. Alicia, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
We are so excited to have you because there's so much that we want to talk to you about. But our first very unprofessional question is, what are you drinking?
I wish that I had something more fun tonight, but I am just drinking water tonight. I have a 7 a.m. doctor's appointment, so just trying to be good tonight.
That's okay. This is a very common occurrence for Robin as well. And she also has usually sparkling water, still water, and something else. But water is a very, very common one for us. Hannah, what about you?
Well, since I'm filling in for Robin, that is exactly what I have. I have my flat water and then I have a hibiscus sparkling water.
Very good. I'm in the sparkling water camp with you guys. I'm drinking a blood orange and tangerine Spindrift. I was going to get Spindrift actually has, not sponsored by, but will take you, an alcoholic version of their drinks as well. On their website, they have cocktail recipes. So you go and you say, I have the blood orange, tangerine, whatever, and it'll show you cocktail and mocktail recipes that you can create yourself. Now they've come out with their whole line of like alcoholic sparkling beverages. And so I was going to get one of those, but yeah, I just got back from traveling and the people I was traveling with are big drinkers. So it's time for a detox. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Alicia, next question for you is tell us your IBD story. What brings you into our community?
So I was diagnosed when I was 14. I got sick pretty quickly the summer I was about to start high school, and it ended up taking me out of the first 6 months of high school. I started high school late, but I was symptomatic pretty much my entire childhood. And it wasn't until I was 14 that I just finally flared to the point that I was hospitalized, and they did a colonoscopy and they did barium enemas, and it was like a torturous nightmare for a teen being so scared and confused and just newly, I had never been in a hospital setting like that before, and it was very scary and traumatizing. But yeah, so I was diagnosed at 14, and yeah, I think that was my first foray into the IBD community. And also my dad at the time, he ended up finding like a kids private forum online for IBD kids. And so I connected with some people there, and I just it unlocked sort of a small piece of the internet that felt like very supportive and helped me through those initial months of my diagnosis. But pretty abruptly after I was diagnosed, I ended up having an emergency colectomy, ended up having an ostomy, went through the J-pouch series, had a ton of fistula repairs. Pretty much all of high school was spent in and out of surgery and the hospital, and now I have a permanent ostomy. I just got that in February, and I'm very grateful. It has been nothing but a blessing since I had it done. So
wow, that would be very traumatic to have all that happen in high school and to have that much of your high school interrupted. Teenage years are hard enough without all of that happening as well.
Right.
Random question, but what did you name your ostomy?
I did name my first ostomy Maria for some reason. I don't know where the name came from. Just one day I woke up and she was Maria. And I mean, at the time, I don't think it was 2004. I don't know that I had heard of people naming their ostomy. So it came very naturally to me as a way to talk about it and make it a less looming part of my body. But yeah, me and Maria, we had some very fun times and some accidents together and some, bad times. But overall, Maria helped me get well again. So I will always be grateful to her.
So now that you have another ostomy, is it an ileostomy or is it a colostomy? And does it get the same name as Maria, or is it a whole new being? Is it, at a different location and a different being altogether?
Yeah, so this is actually my third ostomy. So I I had another ostomy while I was in college to recover from a resection and another fistula repair. And so this is my third, and they've all had different names. My one in college was named Stewart. Unsure where he came from, but he came in and we love Stewart as well. And so this one is Jack Maraschino. Because he looks just like a maraschino cherry and it's in a different spot. So this one is a little bit different than the previous two, and it is also an ileostomy. I don't have any of my colon.
Okay. Oh, right. Because I guess if you would have had a J pouch, then when they went afterwards, it would have had to have been an ileostomy.
Yeah.
Have you noticed differences between the three? Like, because I kind of feel like it must be a different experience every single one because it's not in the same place.
Yeah, so the first one was my surgeon at the time had done an emergency colectomy. And so I woke up with that ostomy without knowing that I was going to wake up with an ostomy. I went in for just a colonoscopy to see if I had started Remicade, and we went in to see if that was doing anything. And then I woke up 3 days later with an ostomy, and she had been able to leave like 6 inches or so of my colon just to allow for a little bit more absorption. And so that one functioned, I would say, the best out of all of them. And in this space that it was, I could still wear like low rise jeans. It was like, could not tell that I even had one at all. And the last two have been a little bit higher, but now I just rock the high waisted jeans and shorts. And I will never let that fad die. The high waisted will die with me.
I love that. I also woke up with I woke up with an ileostomy one day. Same, I had a bowel resection gone bad, and it was pretty high up. And so I had to learn, like, how do you wear pants? And I also
Right.
know, when is the crop top fad going to go out of style? Because I'm already tall, and then I also had this, mid like ostomy bag that I ended up showing people, wearing shorter shirts, but it's like the crop top scene makes it kind of hard when you have an ostomy and you want to wear low-rise jeans. Have you
Right.
had to deal with, like, navigate that with like clothes for women and professional clothes and things like that?
Yeah, I definitely had to like alter my style a bit. And like I said, it's pretty much high waisted or like something at least to like hold it down if I wear anything like tight or anything like that. But yeah, it was definitely an adjustment going from the, low rise teen years and everything was small and tight, and I just like wore what I wanted to wear. And then the second round in college, it was a little different, and that adjustment was a little bit harder for me and like my mental health and body image. And then now, thankfully, with the third one, it like again high waisted and high rise, everything was like in style, and I just won't let it go. I will truly I will truly wear it until, on my deathbed. But so I finally like found a style that works for me, and I feel very comfortable. And, I think I've accepted where it is on my body at this point.
I'm going to back you up a little bit because after you went through high school, you ended up going off to college. And from what I read of your bio, you studied television, radio, and film. So talk to us about that and how
Yeah,
you sort
absolutely.
of parlayed that into doing some patient advocacy things online and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have to credit my like love for film to my middle school teacher. She introduced me to film we had like a middle school news show. And so I ended up learning how to edit and film and produce these news shows at like 12. And that like unlocked something I didn't even know I was interested in. And when I started interviewing for high school, this was pre-diagnosis, she really pushed me to apply for CAPA, which is the Creative and Performing Arts High School here in Philly. And so I did end up applying there to go there for film, and it just further catapulted like my inspiration and spark in filmmaking and storytelling and things like that. And so when I was looking into colleges, I was toying with the idea of going into something like becoming a doctor or surgeon, just because of my experience and, wanting to be able to give back to the community in that way, or going into filmmaking. And I ended up shadowing my surgeon for the summer after I graduated high school, and I fainted in the the OR while I was watching her, and that was it for me. I decided I'm going to go towards film, and so I went to Syracuse for film, and I loved every second of it. I was able to very like creatively sort of share my story, and I was actually very surprised at how receptive my classmates were. We had a journalism course, and one of the topics was like, show us in photos something the class wouldn't know about you. And so naturally I was like, I mean, no one in this classroom knows I have an ostomy. I'm very open about my diagnosis with like my close friends, but everyone in this class doesn't know like how deep that goes. And so I ended up making just like a photo slideshow, like revealing, like lifting my shirt and like revealing the ostomy. And then I got a standing ovation during that watch, and they wanted to see it again, and they were all very touched by just like the very simple way in which I like highlighted this part of my life that no one knew about. And so I got a lot of questions, and people came up to me like, oh my God, my sister has IBD. And I was like, oh, there's something here. Like, I didn't realize how important it was to just like be even more open about it. Like, I had become very comfortable about it because my friends and people in high school were very, very open and, you know, very kind and compassionate. And so that sort of made it easy to talk about then. And then in college, I was like, wow, so I can, you know, sort of heal through filmmaking. These are like combining the two passions of mine, and also share my story in a way that feels very like real and authentic, and might, you know, change somebody else's like viewpoint, or, you know, help me to connect to somebody else who needs support. And so I ended up making like several other videos like that throughout the course of my time at Syracuse. And it was nice to be able to do something that like at one point felt like a hobby and transition it into something that felt like, oh, there's something more tangible here. And I like hope I could continue to do something with this after I graduate.
That's so beautiful how that resonated with everybody and how supportive they were. I mean, that's such a unique experience to share. Wow. Do you still have that slideshow?
I do, yeah.
Do you want to share
Absolutely.
it with everybody so they can see it too?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send you the link after we get
How
off of here.
fun. I love that. So what have you done with that afterwards? So graduate, you have this. Tell me what happened next.
Yeah, so I had been sharing those sort of videos, and you know, I was like a little more active in the IBD community and the private forums that were starting to pop up, and you know, the JPOJ forum that had been around for a while. And I ended up working for a year or so at a short form media company. So we were editing like Brita commercials and Ziploc commercials. And it was like, it was very fun and I learned a lot, but it was not exactly like that. It didn't initiate that passion that I like felt when I was making more content that was, you know, my health and my story related. So this is actually how I got connected to Girls with Guts. So I was, you know, sharing some of that content. I was very open about my story, and I had connected with Jackie, the former president, on the JPOJ forum. And so when she was starting Girls with Guts, she was organizing the very first retreat and asked if I would come film it. And I was like, oh, absolutely. Like, I can't miss this. So I headed on a 24-hour bus ride from Philly to Michigan because it was all I could afford. It was like the cheapest bus, but it had like 10 connections. And I ended up having to take a bus to Pittsburgh. And then I hitched a ride with another Girls with Guts girl. And then we made it. And it was the most beautiful, probably 2 days of my life. I got to meet 30 other women who also had IBD. I had never been in a space like that before, where like at that point, we weren't even talking about our disease. We were just talking about our lives because we knew what each other had going on or like had been through. And so it was much easier to just be like, oh, I can like leave the sick girl hat at the door and now I can just be me. And it was like a very freeing feeling and a very illuminating feeling. And I ended up filming that first retreat and making a video for that. And after that, Jackie asked me to join the board as the director of multimedia. And so eventually I stepped up into the president role in 2017. So I've been a part of Girls with Guts since its inception. And anytime we have a retreat and I'm able to film it and put together a reel, it just like refuels like that passion that I had felt in college. And it means so much to be able to do something just so like tangible and so meaningful, and be able to like highlight those stories of all the women that come through to our events. And yeah, it just like really somehow all aligned in a way that I never would have expected when I was diagnosed. So
That's so beautiful to think about so many women coming together, especially, and getting to put that, like you said, the sick girl hat at the door, and just get to be people together and talk about like, normal everyday things that probably everybody else just gets to think about all the time and not have anything else at the forefront. I know that Girls with Guts also does butt kits or something. I think that's what it's called. I've benefited from one, and I actually still use the bag as my toiletry bag. It was a gift I got while I was in recovering from one of my surgeries, and that's how I learned about Girls with Guts. And then I went on the website and stalked it and saw the retreats and all the different things. Can you tell us a little bit about those other things that Girls with Guts does? Because I know the retreats are more intimate, and it's not it's maybe 20 or 30 people, I think, but these other things that you all do probably reach hundreds and thousands of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you got to benefit from one of our butt baskets. That's awesome. But yeah, so our mission is to support and empower women with IBD and or ostomies for any reason. And so our retreats are our keystone events, and they've expanded to between 30 and 70 people we're able to host now. And we do also have a variety of online and other in-person programming. And yeah, our butt baskets are one of our second keystone programs, where we send kits out to people who are recovering from bowel surgery. We also have infusion kits now. So we send infusion kits out to anyone who's receiving hydration or biologics or iron infusions or anything related to their IBD journey. Just to add a little bit more comfort to those experiences, because that can be daunting, and it reminds you that you're sick every time you're going in for an infusion. And so any way that we can provide a little piece of comfort is something that we try to do. And we also have an online private forum of about 10,000 now we're approaching, and quite a
Wow.
large social media presence as well. So we're, answering DMs and questions and trying to support people online if we can, and like offering that access piece. We also have Gotta Go cards, which are for the Restroom Access Act, Ali's Law. So if you're holding this card and you show it in a state where Ali's Law is present, you will get access to a bathroom. And it just allows for like a more discreet way to like flash like, oh, I have this disease or I have an ostomy. I'm, about to have an emergency. And the hope is that whoever is handed that card will have compassion and be able to help the other person without, making it a big thing. Hopefully, eventually that will just be across the United States, but it's a slow process. And we also have a lot of educational resources. We have IBD Academy, so we have a pretty large online database of different information from fistulae to pregnancy to, biologics and what other kinds of medicine is out there. You can find all the information on our website as well. And we also have an active blog with a lot of other stories about people who are diagnosed and what they're doing with that. And, people who have given birth and their experiences, and people who are, starting college and their tips and tricks for what are the best hacks for, getting through those college days and finding bathrooms, and what are the ADA laws and things like that. So we do have a variety of, other programming to try and expand our reach as much as we can.
What an incredible resource you've all built.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a slow growing process, but then when I look back and I remember like I was managing the Facebook page when we had like 200 people, and now we have almost 23,000 people, and it's like how did this happen, and what do we do with it? Because we're a board of 6 volunteers. We all have the disease ourselves. And so it's very humbling to be like, oh my God, like we have this big community and we want to support them. And then being like, how can we do it on, our spare time? And so we're actively working on a strategic plan right now with a consultant to try and best navigate the next decade of Girls with Guts.
That's very cool. I want to learn more about your retreats. Talk to me about what is, I know it started out probably as a little bit of just like, let's get everybody together and just bond and have our common place. Have you evolved those into more like educational programming, or what would one expect if they were to come to a retreat?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have two types of retreats. We have something called a newbie retreat, which are fully sponsored. So registration costs are covered. All you have to do is show up. We have an application process, and those retreats are specifically capped at 30 so that we can try and recreate that first retreat feel, which was very intimate, just bonding. We don't have any speakers come. We just do crafts. We just do, hikes around the retreat location and boating and archery and just like, face masks, and have snacks and a movie night. And so it's very like fun and relaxed and chill, and you just get to meet other people and everyone's new there. So it's not like a stressful situation where you're the only new person at a retreat. And then we have a larger annual retreat, which we cap at around 50, which we do bring speakers and we bring other resources, and we try and come up with a theme every year. So we had one in Colorado and we tried to focus on women's health as much as we could. So we had pelvic floor therapists come, we did yoga, we had some mental health support, and we try and mix it up with, some bonding, some activities, try to keep it lighthearted, and then also bring in some educational and speakers as well.
That's so cool. I want to come.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, it sounds really awesome. What's kind of the most popular thing to do? Because I mean, I know from my understanding of this is that it's kind of started because of like people's experiences with camp as well. So like kind of feeling like they want a little bit of that camp magic that can sometimes happen with summer camps or something like a camp oasis, but as an adult. So I'm curious what's the most popular kind of activity or aspect of camp other than the bonding, because of course.
I think that we always have a really nice time we usually do like a fire one night. And so everyone sits around the fire and we do marshmallows and we just kind of hang out in nature. And it's hanging out in nature, but with the safety of a bathroom nearby, which I feel like is very reassuring. So those are always very fun. And we do a craft at our retreats called kintsugi, which also is very cathartic. I don't necessarily say that it's a regular camp activity, but it is something that we do like to do at most of our events, where you take a piece of pottery and you break it and you glue it back together with this gold adhesive so that it's meant to be stronger and more beautiful than it was originally. And so we try and tailor that in with like the IBD journey. Like you were diagnosed, you were there, and you maybe had all the pieces, but you didn't know how to glue them back together. And then you come back to yourself in a different way, in a different form, but it's still just as beautiful as you were when you were diagnosed. And now you have this community around you who's also breaking bowls and screaming expletives and letting loose as well around you. And so it's probably one of my favorite activities that we do.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing activity. Because I mean, really nobody understands what it's like to have a middle of the night ostomy leak or all the fun things that come with IBD. I bet it's really nice to be with other people. That's been my favorite part about Camp Oasis, is being with 100 people who have the same situation at home. And really, you can just laugh about it. Because I feel like, a lot of these things, when you tell people, oh, this is my story, people take it as a sob story. But like when I hear you telling your story, I don't hear a sob story. I hear like, wow, like look at all these things Alicia's done. And I think like that's the beauty of having one IBD person to another IBD person is that's how we see each other, is the amazing things that we're doing despite what's going on.
Absolutely. I feel like that's like one of the overarching themes at the events is like, again, with putting like the sick girl hat down, you can just like see who each other are as like these beautiful individuals and nothing less than that. And another favorite thing that happens often at our events is like the ostomy leak, like you said, it's happened at events, but there's like an army of people around you who don't even care, and they're so quick to jump in and help without even a second thought. And it's always very like heartwarming to see how quickly the bonds form. It's almost instantaneous. It's truly magical. The retreats are probably my favorite thing that we do.
And are the retreats people who have been going for years, or is it like a different crowd every year or however often you have them?
Over the last few years, we've had a good mixture of it being like 40% new to 60% returning. We do have people who have come for the last 10 years of events, which we call our OGs, and they've come to every one and they show up and they mentor like our new attendees, and it's nice.
It's like a good mix.
It's a good mix. Yeah. That was one of the reasons that we did create the newbie retreats, though, so that we could introduce like 30 new people who would then have the option to go to like our annual retreats and meet up together if they want to.
It must be really lovely to be in a place where when something happens, people just know how to help you instead of saying, can I help you? As a person who doesn't live with inflammatory bowel disease, that is a struggle for me is, how am I helpful? How can I be helpful to somebody who is living with this disease that's struggling in a way? Because I don't understand it, in the same way. Mm-hmm. And so it must be really nice to be in a place where like somebody gets an ostomy leak and they're like, I got you. I know exactly. Here's some supplies I have. If you need some, this works better for me. Just so lovely to be in that environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and not that I ever promote sharing medicine, but like if you need some Pepto or Tums or Imodium, like I'm sure somebody has it. I remember the one day, like I have avascular necrosis in my ankles from the prednisone that I took as a teen. And so my ankle was really bothering me at the retreat. And I like had a compression stocking on and somebody just appeared behind me with an ice pack. And I had not even uttered yet that I was having any pain. They just like noticed. And it was very sweet and I was very touched. And I was like, I don't know that anybody in my regular life would ever have like picked up that cue and then just like knew what to do. It's moments like that that like stick with me forever.
But there's good informal education too, because like things like that, like these random side effects that we all have, but nobody else really has. I feel like the thing about IBD is if there is a rare side effect, I'm going to have it. But I know that that's not actually unique to me, that I know a lot of other IBD people, like you said, or like you have inflammation from prednisone. I mean, there's all these side effects that only we have. And so I bet there's a lot of informal education that goes on too, just from anecdotally sharing here, hey, here's what I was going through from my last flare, or hey, here's the new biologic that I'm going on. Is that a lot of what the conversations are like?
Yes, that is a lot what a lot of the conversations are like. I remember it was at the very first retreat that I learned about what calmoseptine was. Have either of you ever used calmoseptine? That is a game-changing butt cream. I will tell you that. It is like a minty cool breeze on your butt. It was my favorite thing, and I no longer have a butt, so I can't use it.
I didn't know what it was until I got my Girls with Guts kit. Actually, I also
Yeah.
heard of it, and then you guys gave me some.
Yeah, that was one of the things that as soon as we were like redoing our butt baskets and what goes in them, I was like, calmoseptine has to go in them. That is pertinent to your butt care. But yeah, so at the retreats, I think that is one of the most special things too, is just being able to talk to other people about what you're going through. You will then take away all of like the tools that you didn't know you needed just in having those conversations and, learning all the new tips and tricks and like, oh, what ostomy supplies do you use? Like maybe that would work better for me. So yeah, that is definitely another benefit to attending those events.
I had to look up on your website how to spell this butt cream. So I will make sure that it's included in the show notes for people so that if they want some, they can
Absolutely.
find it. A link to your website will be there as well, so people can take a look at other sponsors that you have for the kits as well. Oh, I want to talk about the education that you have on there. So I'm curious about sort of, because you have forums that are happening. So how is that broken up? Because you have all sorts of moderators. Do you have like different topic areas, or if somebody starts to engage with kind of the forums and chatting amongst themselves, what should they expect?
Yeah, so if you join our private forum, we have several moderators in there who will jump in and offer support if it looks like there's support needed, or, will alert us to if there's like a post that's kind of, something's happening in the comment section where it's just unfavorable or something sticks out as spam, and they're really in there like protecting everyone that's in there so that it still remains like a safe place to ask your questions, because, people are asking very intimate questions because it's private and it's all women. And so having and maintaining that as a safe space is very important to us.
Like, what are some of the more common question themes that you're getting in that group?
There are a lot of questions about medication, obviously, like, are you taking XYZ? What can I expect? What are the side effects? Or I'm having XYZ surgery. What are the best items to bring to the hospital? There are also a lot of questions like, I'm moving to another state. Who are the best GI doctors there? And so, there are a lot of ways that people connect. And then there are some lighter posts where it's like, I had an IBD win today. I wanted to share it. And then like, what are your IBD wins? And so it's a really nice mixture of like support and also education.
So as you're sort of striving to protect people in the community, do you have parameters, I'm assuming you do, around like healthcare professionals joining it or people that are not women living with inflammatory bowel disease? That's question kind of number one. And attached to that is also, how do you train your moderators to handle questions that are not kosher to the group? Like that's something that you feel like is not serving the community.
So in terms of moderating and just, best practices, we do have like a moderating guide. So anybody who we bring on as a volunteer moderator has this moderator guide, which goes over like a bunch of different FAQ on types of questions and types of content that we just like typically see as spammy. Like if somebody is coming into the forum and they're saying, oh, I was healed with ice cubes, like maybe that's a red flag and we should probably get that comment out of there. So things like that, just an awareness of what sounds super like salesy or fishy, and making sure that the conversations are flowing in a way that is conducive to, making people feel supported and empowered. And so they're not leaving the forum being like, oh my God, I just asked a question. Now I feel attacked for I was seeking support and I left with the opposite. So the goal in, training our moderators is to lead with support and also, how would you want people to respond to you if you were struggling? I think that's one of the biggest things and pieces of advice that I try and give moderators.
That is a hard one. I guess I'm thinking of like Reddit is a fascinating place.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of chatter. I mean, I sort of follow the Reddits on ulcerative colitis and Crohn's just to kind of see what's happening. And yeah, there are some times where I'm like, wow, this is the wild, wild west. And so I know you have to
Yeah.
be super protective, especially, but it's fortunate that you have a sort of closed community and you could perhaps do a little bit more checking on what's happening there.
Yeah, it can go off the rails pretty quickly. And there have been several threads that like have gotten messaged to me if they weren't caught fast enough. And I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta get in there because I don't know what's happening. So yeah, some sticky situations that have been, worked out and worked through. And so yeah, we try and keep our eyes on it as best we can.
And it's hard because I know, I mean, there's people that are like, that something has worked for them. And so they're so excited to share it. They want to be like, this thing that I did was helpful, but it can come across as like perhaps a bit too passionate at times of, like
Absolutely.
wanting to be like, of course, avocado oil was like the thing that cured me. It's not everyone, by the way, just using that as an example. But, like, and it makes me sad because I'm like, I'm so glad that worked for you. Like, it's so wonderful that you found something that you
Right.
feel was helpful to you, but also you got to calm down. Everybody's
Absolutely.
IBD is different. So
Yeah, I think that's another piece of advice is just everybody's experience is different. And so everybody's on a different diet, different medications, different combinations. You have different, lives, different stress levels. And so things that impact someone positively may really impact somebody else very negatively. So just being mindful of all of that.
that's what makes IBD such a wild disease, like, or a wild
Yeah.
collection of diseases, really. Hannah's is different than yours, is different than Robin's, and, you're all women living with IBD. And so it's just kind of, it makes a very interesting community, which makes lots of great conversation, just not exactly uniform.
Alicia, your part 1 of 2 question, I think you made me think about having medical providers on there. I was curious about if this Facebook, I know it's just for patients, but like, many patients like you look into whether they want to be a doctor or a nurse. A lot of my IBD friends ended up pursuing a medical career because of the fantastic care that they got or the not so good care that they got. But how does that work like for people? Do you run into that where there's patients who are medical providers and then all of a sudden you have somebody giving medical advice either at a retreat or on the Facebook page or things like that? How do you guys navigate that? Or do IBD patients just know that that's not a line to cross when you're not in that space?
That's a good question. I think it is just reiterating how all of our experiences are different. And so to take any advice that's given with a grain of salt and, to ask your doctor first, because we don't want anybody just taking anything or taking any piece of advice and then getting really sick or getting thrown into a flare. So I think it's, I don't see it super often in our forum or at our events where people are just giving medical advice out. I mean, we're giving anecdotal advice out. And so again, reiterating to take even that with a grain of salt, just because it does impact people differently. So I think it's just, again, being mindful. And yeah, I haven't noticed any instances that like raised red flags where I was like, somebody's just in there like feeling out a lot of advice and we're going to have to quell that. Thankfully, that hasn't been too big of an issue.
I think that IBD patients probably know. And then if they end up becoming a provider, they know from their patient hat, because I don't know about for you, but for me, one of the things I've always struggled with is people saying, well, did you just drink filtered water? Or did you try, did you just put a lemon in your socks? Or, just some crazy thing. And I'm like, if I could have just put a lemon in my sock, do you think I would have had a 6-hour surgery? I mean, but I think IBD patients just get it because that's something we deal with all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You get into a groove and you know what works best for you. And so, yeah, I mean, there are comments like that. A lot of those comments have come from my own family where they're like, have you just XYZ? You shouldn't be doing so much and stressing yourself out. And I'm like, I wish that I could control that in some level, but I can't. I just always have to laugh because I'm like, at this point, I'm an IBD patient of 20 years. What you're saying to me is just like, I'm not going to take your advice. out.
You make an interesting point. I feel like IBD patients are such overachievers. And you're one of those people if you think about like all the things you've told us that you've done today. And I'm sure that doesn't even scratch the surface of what you've done for IBD patients and just for you as a human. But I think there's this like natural drive to do more to show, okay, IBD doesn't get to win because Alicia did all these things, and, take that IBD.
That is actually something I struggle with often. So I'm trying to find the balance of like not pushing myself beyond my, boundaries. And also, I am very passionate. I like to be involved in a lot of different things. I like to show up where I can. And so trying to just find that sweet spot where I'm able to do both and then like not also make myself sick has become a priority in my life at this point.
Well, it's funny you say that because like one of the things we've talked about on the show and that Robin is very open about is that when she is well, she has this like drive to do and go and be. And because she knows there's going to be a time or inevitably at some point there'll probably be a flare and she won't be able to go and do and be and in the same way. And so, I'm sure it's hard to figure out the balance of like doing all the things you want to do and having that sort of, push, that internal, like, I want to go do these things. I can do it now. I need to go, and balancing it out with taking care of yourself because you don't want to, like you said, sort of push yourself so hard. But also, like, anytime people are like, just manage your stress better, I want to punch them in the face because honestly, like, if you want to do anything in your life, you're going to be involved in stress. I mean, do you want to have a job? Do you want to have a partner? Do you want to like interact with the world? Do you want to be on social media in any extent, form at all? You're going to encounter stress. So like for people to be like, you need to manage your stress better, like stop it. Just stop it.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, it makes me laugh every time because I'm like, just stepping outside of the house is stressful. So how am I
Yeah.
supposed to manage my stress? Just stay put and, interact with no one. Don't sign on to Facebook,
Yep.
things like
Well,
that. It's just like not possible. It's not realistic. So
I mean, right now being off of social media is not necessarily a bad advice for people who need some stress relief,
true.
but it is
Yeah.
also, again, like I have to do it for my job. You have to do it for your job.
Mhm.
Like it's not really a viable thing for us to not kind of interact with the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
I bet it's also just a revolving door because I mean, revolving door might be the wrong expression, but it's like if you do too much, you're stressed out. But if you don't do anything because you're trying to maintain the status quo or not get stressed, then I'm stressed out because I'm bored and I'm not doing anything. And so it's like I've just kind of embraced like I am a person that gets stressed out. And so I might as well enjoy life and I'll be stressed
Yeah.
along for the ride.
Well, and Hannah's just thinking about like being in a forum though, and like, I mean, I'm sure this happens to you. Like as an attorney, I'm sure there are times where you're in places and you're like, I know I can give enough information to get this person kind of on the right track, but not so much that I'm now giving legal advice, quote unquote, as this person's attorney. So I'm sure it's probably similar to that for the medical folks. Sorry, this went back to previous conversation, but I was just thinking about that in your case because you're kind of in the same boat.
I am, and I think that's why the question was on my mind because
Yeah.
I practice a very niche area of law, so I probably could not help anybody with anything they wanted help with, but people, because they know I'm a lawyer, will say, well, I got a divorce or somebody said something mean to me at work. Well, they ask just random questions and I'm always very careful because I'm like, well, I can't give you, I'm not going to give you legal advice. This is, and so I think that's why I was thinking about medical providers. And I was also thinking just about people being pushy because that's one thing I've dealt with a lot on my IBD journey is not necessarily IBD patients, but maybe people who are IBD related, like they have a close family member or a child with IBD. So they're really entrenched with the diseases, but they're not necessarily not in the same emotional way that I am. And so I've had a lot of pushiness on, we'll do this diet or, eliminate every single thing in this food group and then you'll be fine. And that's what I was thinking is, when you open the door to have a medical professional, are they pushy? But I bet that IBD patients just know that, because they've received that, they know not to serve that as well.
Yeah, I think that's just something you become used to and know how to deflect at a certain point in your journey. Just because, yeah, I think when anyone's diagnosed, there is like this influx of unsolicited advice and like, oh, my cousin's husband's daughter's friend has IBD and they took this, so maybe you should try that. And there's a lot of that like overloaded in the beginning. And I think it's just IBD patients know to trust their doctors and go there first for any of that information. So I think, yeah, you become good at like deflecting that kind of advice.
How do you all determine who is a newbie? And I ask because, like, I had been diagnosed for 11 years and I thought I knew everything there was to know about Crohn's. And then I woke up with an ostomy and I was a part of this new community that I knew nothing of. And I really just knew nothing about. And so I felt like a newbie in 2021. And then having a reversal, I felt like a newbie again. So what is a newbie when it comes to the retreats?
Yeah, so a newbie for us is anybody who hasn't yet attended a Girls with Gus retreat. You could be diagnosed 20 years ago, you could have a brand new ostomy. We've had a very large mixture of people who were diagnosed 6 months before the retreat versus like people who were diagnosed a decade ago versus people who have had ostomy surgery due to an accident or cancer or unrelated to IBD. So we do get like a good mixture, but overall it's just people who haven't attended a retreat yet. That makes you eligible to attend our newbie retreat.
Okay, so that's very inclusive. I like that because really, I mean, nothing about IBD is linear. Like things change every week,
Right.
every month, every year. And so really you could become a newbie after having the disease for 30 years.
Exactly. It's such a good point. Like any new surgery, any new body change, any new scar from anything, a new medication, like suddenly there's like this persistent, I call it grieving process as you like are adjusting over time and aging and things that like affected you before, like diet wise, might not affect you the same, vice versa, 6 months later. So it is kind of like you're always learning. And so you kind of are always a newbie at a certain point.
And
So
the life seasons change too. Like, I mean, you were diagnosed at 14. I was diagnosed at 17. So we were both really young. And I'll bet that you were not thinking about fertility when you got diagnosed. I know I was not. And I remember my
right.
mom took me to like an adult support group because I didn't really fit in with like young or old. And people there were talking about fertility. And I thought this doesn't apply to me at all. And I never thought or researched fertility related to people with IBD. But now, as somebody in my 30s and a newlywed, it's like this whole new world that's like this life season. And I'll bet also for IBD patients going through menopause, I bet that, that's a whole, there's just like seasons of life, and your IBD, I bet
Yeah.
the same. And then all of a sudden it's a new season.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a totally different thing experiencing high school and then experiencing college and then experiencing life post college. And so, yeah, it was a learning curve for all of them. And yeah, when I was diagnosed, fertility was not on my mind, but that was the first question my parents asked my surgeon when I was approaching J-pouch surgery. It was like, will she be able to have babies? And I was like, I had never even had. I hadn't even started dating at that point. That was not on my mind. And so it's just like, it was interesting. I remember hearing my dad ask my surgeon that outside of the door. And I was like, not on my mind. And, now I'm 34 and I'm not going to be having kids, but it's just interesting to think about how like the journey started to now. Yeah. And it is ever changing seasons for sure.
Parents are so sly. I don't envy being a parent of a teenager getting diagnosed with
Yeah.
IBD. I bet that's so hard. And I guess as a parent, you're looking at your kid's whole life. And so fertility, even though that's far
Right.
away from a 14-year-old, when a parent is, hearing this diagnosis, I'm sure that's hard.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is a question you may not be able to answer, but you got me thinking about birth control and ostomies. So, like when you have something like a J-pouch or an ostomy, obviously you don't have your whole GI tract for all of those like hormones to take root and help you not have babies. Is that a thing? And I
I'm
realize
on
you're
birth
not a medical
control.
provider, and so this is not medical
Right.
advice, everybody. But I am curious if this has come up and like what's been the conversation like.
So I think a lot of the conversations with birth control specifically are absorption, because
Yeah,
with ostomies, some of your pills are just coming right on out whole. And so
yeah.
that's obviously a concern with birth control specifically. I'm on birth control for endometriosis, so I'm not on it for birth control purposes per se,
But even the
but yeah,
efficacy
it's
for that, you would think would be compromised potentially if you're not actually absorbing the pill.
In that case,
good point.
they recommend, well, not medical advice, just anecdotal advice. When they gave me options, it was and I have ovarian cyst, which is why I needed options. And it was the IUD. Wait, so there's the IUD or the arm thing. I forget what.
Mhm.
And for if you have, I mean, that only addresses absorption though. It doesn't address any of the other thing, like the hormone changes and things like that come from birth control.
I mean, it would make sense because it's absorbing in a different way. So it's not having to go
Yeah.
through your GI tract to get absorbed. So, well, now I've got a question to ask the medical providers that come on next.
Yeah, I'm curious too.
Because I mean, it's honestly, like you said, Robin had talked about like a pill coming out fully formed still in her ostomy bag and being like, cool, that didn't work, so I think
Right.
it was a pain pill or something even, so it's like you're not really getting
To absorb.
these are things that you want to absorb. Birth
Absolutely.
control and pain management seem really high on the list.
It's your top priority.
And Imodium when you want to slow things down. So if that's coming out, it's not slowing things down.
Girls with Guts does have a supply closet. Don't you guys have like kind of something? Did I
We
see
have
that?
something called the Poop Program where we outlink to two other organizations that do send out ostomy supplies. So one is Kindred Box and one is Friends of Ostomies Worldwide.
Okay, I've heard of Friends of Ostomies Worldwide. So, and that's also a place where, like, if you get ostomy supplies and either you have some leftover,
Mhm.
and you're on the next stage of your J pouch, or you just they don't work for you, you can donate your supplies, is my understanding as well. So
Yeah.
that other people might benefit from it. So you don't end up with a bunch of. I know Robin, when she was through her J pouch surgery, just had like a huge box of supplies. Didn't she send it? Send it either Stacy and then Stacy sent it to you, Hannah. I don't know. It sounded like it went a couple of places.
I've benefited from a lot of supplies. My friend Ben and I had ostomies at the same time, but he had a colostomy, I had an ileostomy, and our insurances didn't cover what we needed. But for some reason, my insurance covered what he did, and I was able to get things. And so we kind of, hey, I tried this because my insurance covered it, but it didn't work for me. I can't do anything with it. Do you want it? And so we kind of benefited from each other's trials and errors. I think that that's allowed. You can't send supplies back. And so
No,
Yeah.
either they do nothing or somebody else can try them.
I mean, and obviously Friends of Ostomies and whatever wouldn't exist if this wasn't a opportunity to share. So, I mean, the same thing happens to other types of durable medical equipment, things that can get passed along, shared.
I also learned that ostomy bags, the adhesive loses its stickiness over time, not quickly, but like over years. Like I had a friend who had an ostomy and then had a reversal and kept them in case she ever had one again. And then when she had the second ostomy, they ended up not actually sticking. And so that taught me that when I had mine, if I got a product that didn't work for me, I either, gave it to a friend or I gave it to my ostomy nurse so that another patient could use it right away and not have it sit on my shelf while it lost its stickiness.
Yeah.
That's an
No, I
interesting
learned
problem.
that the hard way with I have like an emergency ostomy kit in my trunk and I forgot to change out those wafers. And so I had a leak at work and was like, oh, my emergency ostomy supplies that had been in the trunk for a year in like the heat and the cold. And so it didn't help the situation at all. I mean, I was able to get home, but it like basically fell off as I walked in the door. It was awful. But yeah, lesson learned on that one. The adhesives do not last long.
Alicia, if there is one thing that you could tell yourself or anybody in the IBD community, what would that be?
I think one of the biggest things for me when I was diagnosed was finding community or finding like one person that I could talk to or lean on for support. So I would say if you're listening to this and you're not a part of a community of people yet, there are a ton of different niche communities. There's Camp Oasis, there's UOAA, there's Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, there's Girls with Guts. So if any of those appeal to you, find your community, join a forum, find somebody to talk to because this disease can be very isolating and it can be very lonely and it can be very hard and daunting. And so having support is very important for your mental health and ultimately your physical health as well. So
That is really great advice. And thank you for facilitating that beautiful community for all these women that are reaching out for that connection. Because I think that's, like you said, that is such an important piece of this, is that you're not alone and there are going to be people that want to help you and connect with you and really, help you create a space where that's safe and comfortable for you to learn to live with your disease and learn to move on to every stage of life living with your Crohn's or your colitis or your ostomy. So thank you so much, Alicia. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you and to go on a couple of tangents with you as well. So we really, really appreciate you joining us tonight. We appreciate everybody else for listening. And I appreciate Hannah for joining me as my co-host. So thank you, Hannah. And cheers, everybody.
cheers. It has been lovely talking with you ladies and getting to know you as well. Hi, this is Alicia. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and share it with your friends.